Hi, this is a summary of Chapter 6. I'm going to do this in two parts. So this is the first part, and Chapter 6 speaks about graphs. So graphs are basically a way for us to make sense of quantitative information. So when we have a bunch of numbers and we really cannot figure out, what they mean to us or to the participant or to the client, we really have to draw them to be able to figure out if the treatment is working, if our data shows an increase in behavior, a decrease, stability or instability. So it's really a way for us to understand numbers by visually analyzing them. So graphing is a way to evaluate a program effectiveness, a way to organize, store, and interpret the results of work. There are 6 benefits they talk about in this chapter, 6 benefits of graphic display and visual analysis. The first one is plotting each measure of behavior on a graph right after the observation period. So you really don't have to wait for like a week or 2 or 3 to show your data on a graph. You can do it right after each observation. In this way, you can kind of monitor where the behavior is going, where the treatment is taking the participant, if there's continuous increase or decrease. So you're basically monitoring what's going on with the treatment, even day by day, if you're decided to draw your data every day. Number 2 is continual contact with the data enable us to explore interesting variations in behaviors as they occur. So if you're looking at the visuals or the graphs every day, you're able to see changes in behavior. You're also able to see different details. Like say if you're looking at a behavior every day for the full day, you're able to figure out, for example, that the behavior is happening more often in the morning hours. And this way, you're monitoring what's happening, you're monitoring changes in behaviors and variations in behaviors. Number 3, it takes less time than statistical tests of inference used in group comparison research. It does not have predetermined level for determining significance of behavior change. So basically, you don't have to wait for someone to tell you what is significant, what is not, like we see in like questionnaires or standardized testing. It's really an individualistic way of looking at data. It really depends on the behavior you're working on. It depends on your client. What are you trying to accomplish? What is socially significant to your specific client? So it's really good in this sense that it takes less time and it's very individualistic. Number 4 is weak or unstable effects on graphs lead to further experimentation to discover controlling variables that produce meaningful behavior change. So if you're looking at a graph and you feel that, or not feel, you see that there is some instability, you see that the behavior maybe had increased and now it's decreasing again, you're not sure what's going on, this is a way for you to start, experimenting more, trying to ask more questions to kind of figure out what went wrong or why the treatment is not working or why your data seem to be weak. Number 5, it's your own visual analysis to interpret data, not an expert on an author's interpretation. So again, it's an individualistic need or program. So if it's up to you to figure out if this is this visual analysis you're doing works for the client or it doesn't work, and if it's socially significant or not. You don't have to wait for an expert who would come and look at the statistics and tell you if it makes sense, if it's significant or not. Number 6, it's a way for continuous and immediate feedback to people whose behavior they represent. So again, if you're of course working with a client, it's very important for this client to see how he's doing. And for example, if you're working with somebody who's trying to quit smoking, you can look at the visual analysis together. You can show him how he's doing, and maybe if there's some days, you see that it seems like there's more smoking happening. You can kind of explain and discuss what happened, what kind of behaviors happened during these specific days, and what can be changed. So it's a really nice way to engage your client in the results of your treatment. And visual analysis is very simple. Everybody can understand it. They don't have to study applied behavior analysis to understand graphs, just by you explaining to them the trend and what's exactly happening in the graph. It should be easy for them or simple for them to understand. We're going to talk about trends and variability and levels in a second. So the chapter speaks about 5 kinds of graphs or types of graphs: line graphs, bar graphs, cumulative records, semi-logarithmic charts, and scatter plots. Let's start with the line graph for this part. Okay, so we're going to look at a line graph, and a line graph is usually, it looks like this, and it starts usually at a 0, and it has a y-axis and an x-axis. The x-axis is a horizontal line, and the y is a vertical line, and it usually have the same distance between numbers. Here, this is usually the measure of the behavior, or the measure of something you're looking at. So we can say 0, 5, 10. So the same points from 5 to 10, they're 5 points. Same thing from the 10 to the next, which is 15, and 15 to 20, and 20 to 25. So line graph usually is the same points between each measure or each point on the y-axis. The x-axis usually represents sessions or days or periods, so it's a timeline. So we're going to look at behavior of raising hands in the classroom, and we're gonna go by session 1, 2, should really be days, not sessions, because it's school day. But just for for the graph, we're gonna delete sessions and put days. Sorry about that. So days. Okay. And here we'll say number of behavior, and the behavior is basically raising of the hands, and then the figure caption, which is usually written under the graph. You can describe the behavior you're interested in or you're measuring. Okay, so next is something called data points. So every time you measure a behavior, there's a data point that represents the measurement. So say in day 1, you observe the behavior happening 10 times. So you're going to put a data point right here for the first day, and next to the 10, should be really a circle. And then day 2, you measured and it's 15 times. Day 3 is 10, day 4 maybe going up 20, and then day 5, let's go back to 15. Okay, so these are called data points. Now there's something called data path. The data path is basically the line that connects the data points, like this. Okay. So say you're not really doing any treatment, so we're gonna call this baseline, and usually you write the condition label at the top of the graph like this. Okay, so say after the 5 days you decided to start your treatment, and it could be, maybe some kind of enforcement you're going to add, or maybe some antecedent intervention, and you're going to add a condition, which is a treatment condition. When you do that, you have to draw a solid line like this and expand your graph with the x-axis, so you can continue the days of observation. Okay. Okay, so let's continue the days. So this is day 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Of course, this is just a sample. When you do graphing, you need grid paper, so you could actually have a precise measurement. to look at. So we're gonna write here the figure caption, I'm sorry, the label condition right here. So I'm gonna write treatment, or T. And let's look at data points. So you can observe the same behavior of raising hands. So 10, 7, day 7 would be say 15, and then day 8, 10, and then 9, there's a reduction, 5, and then 10, 5. And then you're going to connect the data points. Okay, right, that. You never connect these 2 points because these are 2 different conditions. Okay, so you want to separate them to see the difference. So now that you looked at 2 conditions, you have to draw, this line right here, the solid line. However, say you are doing 2 treatments, but the difference is really minor. For example, if we call this, instead of baseline, we call it treatment number 1, and this one is treatment number 2. And say you change the frequency of, the schedule of reinforcement. So you decided to give reinforcement every 3 times you see the child raising his hand, and you changed it to 5 times in treatment number 2. If you do that and it's really the same treatment, but the change is really minimal or minor, it's only the frequency, you're going to draw a dotted line like this, not a solid one. And that basically tells us that the change between the 2 treatments is not really a major thing, or it's not a baseline in a treatment. It's a minor thing that you've changed, and it's a schedule of reinforcement. That's an example, of course. Okay, also in line graphs, you could see multiple lines on one condition. So say you're looking at 2 behaviors of the same child, you can draw 2 lines. Each line would represent a behavior. You also can do 2 lines if you are measuring 2 dimensions of the same behavior. You can do 2 lines if you're measuring the same behavior across 2 participants. So let's do an example. Let's talk about the behavior of saying the answers in the classroom, like answering questions without raising the hand. And say you're comparing the 2 behavior, the raising of the hand and answering questions. So we're gonna use another symbol. So let's use a triangle. So you're collecting your data and you see that answering questions without raising hands started at 20, day 1, and then maybe 15, so this is gonna overlap. And then day 3, 15, day 4, 10, day 5, 20. And of course you're going to connect them together with a data path, the line. And then let's go to the treatment number 2, and maybe we will see that the behavior had increased even more than the first treatment. So let's go to day 6, 15, day 7, 20, day 8, 20, day 9, 20, and day 10, 25. And of course, again, we're going to connect them with the data path, which is the line that connects all the dots. Okay, so you can see line graphs that have 2 lines in each condition. And again, the change line, it depends. If it's a major change, you're going to put a solid line. If it's a minor change, you're going to put a dotted line. Okay, so this is kind of like a sample of the line graph. Also, the line graph shows us 3 different things that I'm going to talk about: level, trend, and variability. And they all give us some information about our data. So let's talk about these 3 things. So let me clear here the graph a little bit. Okay. Alright, so we're gonna just do this. Okay, so sometimes we can keep the two treatments here, sometimes you see data that looks like this. And of course, there are data points. I didn't draw them, but they would be somewhere here, maybe here. Okay, but you would see the line going like this, up and down, up and down. And that tells us that the variability here is high, which means that the behavior is not stable, or it's not staying at the same frequency. There's a lot of variability. So we call this high variability. Or you could see something that looks like this. Okay. I'm sorry, let me do this a better way because we have only here 5 days. So let me do 5. So you'll be like this, maybe. Okay. So you see here the variability is not high. The change between the days are not very high. It's not going up and down. It is going up and down, but not. There's no significant differences between the days. So for example, day 6, it's around 5. Day 7, it's it's okay. So this should be like that. Okay, so here, let me do data points so we would not get confused. Okay. So this should be like this. Okay. Sorry. Okay, so you know what? Let me just. Okay. Day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9, day 10. Okay, much better. So you see, day 6, 5 times it happened. Day 7 around 7 times. Day 8 went back to 5. Day 9, 5. Day 10, 6. So the variability is very low here, okay, which tells us that behavior is continuing at the same rate or close frequency, which is gonna give us confidence level, because you know what, there's some control happening. Behavior is not going up and down, and it looks like maybe we have an average. We could say we have an average of when the behavior is happening, like how much is the behavior happening and so forth. So that's variability. You see the difference between the two sides. High variability on the left and low variability on the right. Okay, so let's talk about level. So level is basically the average of the behavior rate, or the median. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, and maybe we'll do this. Okay, so the level is again the average or the median, and we can calculate it using the numbers we have. And then once we have the number, we are going to draw the line that represents the number. So say for example, here on the left, we have an average of 6. Okay, so that we can say the behavior of raising hands happen on average 6 times a day. So we're gonna come to next to 6 and draw a line. Okay, this is the level line. Okay, so this is kind of low, okay, because it's 6 times and it's towards the bottom of the graph. Okay, the second treatment, again, we're going to get the average, and it's going to look something like this. Okay, all right, so this line again is level, and it's kind of high. It's around 16, average 16 times per day. So that's a high level. It really helps us sometimes in understanding some behaviors, or if you're trying to really, what you're focusing on is the average of the behavior. It could be that you're interested in test scores, or like correct responding, something like that, and you're interested in the average for each student. However, the problem with level is that if you are looking at average, you may not pay attention to, or not pay attention, you may have some outliers that can change your calculations, and it may not give you the full picture of how the child can perform. Also, the problem with level is that you might not be able to know if the behavior is going up or down because you only have an average of the scores. So you're not really looking at the trend. So let's talk about trend. So trend is basically the way the behavior is going. So let's talk about trend. So for the first treatment here, let's say that this behavior was going this way. Okay. Right. It's a little difficult because we have only 5 days, but it may go up more. So there's a trend here. The behavior, there's a high variability. Okay. 5, 10, 5, 10. 5, 10, 6, 12. But the trend is, you could see some trend here. Of course, again, this is a sample graph, but when you have the numbers, it will be easier for you to, have a nice drawing, very precise, and really see where the lines are going. But the trend is basically the path where the behavior is going. And if you draw here a line to connect, or across the data path, it shows that there's a trend because the behaviors are going up. Meanwhile, if you have something like this, okay, and you draw the line across it, there's no trend. It's very obvious that the behavior is not going up nor going down. Trend could be going up or going down, which means the behavior is either increasing or decreasing. And that really helps off if you're interested in knowing across time, is the behavior increasing or decreasing. You're not really interested in the average of the behavior because it could be that you're looking at a behavior that you really want to see the difference between day 1 and day 10, regardless of what was the average of the behavior. Okay, so that this is what we call trend. So this is basically a line graph. And I'm going to continue my next part showing you the rest of the graphs mentioned in the chapter. Thank you so much.